Welcome everybody. Welcome. Good morning. I think it's still good morning. Welcome. Depending where you're at, I guess. Welcome. Hi, Jennifer. How are you? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So, welcome to the Time Management for 2022 virtual workshop. So, welcome. We have about, hey, Mike. Didn't see you pop in. Good to see you, buddy. Welcome. It's fun to see old friends pop onto these Zoom calls, I guess Zoom virtual webinars. So welcome. Hey, Nixon, how you doing? Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you as well. So I'm going to, Abby, to the extent that you can, mute people when they join. That way we do not have a lot of noise when people join us. So welcome. Welcome for this time management webinar for 2022. My name is Steve Riley. I get the pleasure of doing today's workshop, and since we have a very tight timeline, I'm going to go to work pretty quickly. So for those of you who don't know me, as I said, my name is Steve Riley. I'm one of the partners at our company Atticus, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. One of the things that lawyers find interesting about me is I am first and foremost an attorney. I did about 10 to 12 years as a trial lawyer, and then I did another 10 to 12 to 15 years as an estate planning lawyer before joining Atticus in 2010. I sold my practice in 2010 for a variety of reasons, but it's been a fascinating experience because I've got the experience of being in the trench, doing court work, trial work. I did commercial lit plaintiff's work, and as an estate planning attorney, I did estate planning, elder law, and some business stuff. And so I've got a really interesting background. In the past decade or so, I've been working with Atticus to help lawyers think about how to grow their practice and balance their life. Written some books. None of that's particularly interesting, but it's just kind of helps you have a background. So the company I'm with, for those of you new to us, is that it's called Atticus. We've been around over 30 years now, hard to believe. And we help lawyers build great practices and great lives. We really have tried to help lawyers think about how to build a fantastic practice and a fantastic life at the same time and go for kind of a double win. Now, how we do that is that we've developed some concepts that we like to call strategic growth concepts, and we teach and share those through our coaching programs. And we do coaching programs both in group settings, which I really like because you can learn from each other in group settings. It's very, very efficient and effective that way. And we also do it through one-on-one for people that don't like to travel or have kids at home and they can't travel, or in my case, an elderly parent that you have to keep an eye on. So you may have to be in a position where you can't travel. So yeah, that's who we are and what we do. What I'd like to do, though, is also teach you kind of quickly a safety net. We have a considerable amount of people on the call today, and we have 7 concepts I want to share with you that are all pretty practical, but some of you aren't going to have the opportunity to dig in deep on each of these concepts, and I'll go through them pretty quickly. Nixon, Mike, some people that have been around for a while, maybe, yeah, I can do that, and can jump on a topic pretty quickly. Whereas others will be like, yeah, I'm not really sure what that means. I've only heard that the first time, so you may not be able to take complete advantage of these. So I went to my partners yesterday, and we're trying to experiment. So I went to my partners, and I arranged for a lifeline. And the lifeline is what's called a practice growth diagnostic. And a practice growth diagnostic is the first step in our journey of helping lawyers. And it's $295, and it really allows you to look at your DISC, how your personality impacts your practice, kind of do an assessment of your practice, both on time management, client development, cash flow and profitability, and team building, and then get some feedback from one of our coaches on how that works, and then identify the 3 most important actions. Now, to support you with that, I got my partners to comp 15 of these. And so if you're interested in taking advantage of that to go further, What you're going to do is get some instructions from Abby in just a second, and Abby's going to tell you how to do that. So I got 15 of those, and they're going to be good for about a 24-hour window with a code. And so, Abby, could you explain how that works before I dig into the content?
Sure. So if you're interested in this practice growth diagnostic, you can send me your email in the chat box. And what I'll do is I'll send you a scheduling link for Terry and Denise. And the first 15 people to schedule an appointment, they're going to receive the practice growth diagnostic complimentary. And like Steve said, the offer is only good for 24 hours. So feel free to send your email in that chat box, and I'll get that and send that email out as soon as I can.
Thank you, because it's designed for guys that like to think about stuff and not take action, like you, Mike Witzke. I'm looking at you, Mike. I see you. so, so if you want to take advantage, do that. The two people that are doing those calls our meetings are Denise Gamez, who's been with us for 10 to 12 years now, and of course Terry Hayes, who joined us in 2020. Terry is a people person. She's always brings a smile to every party she comes to. So I love having Terry. Terry's with us today. So Terry, you can wave frantically so people can see you. Now with that, I'd like to get on to the work because we have a short time frame together. So if you have pencil and paper ready, I'm going to encourage you to take some notes. This will be recorded, but these are 7 practical time management suggestions. So as you go along, you may want to draw this picture. I'm going to give you 2 quick pictures. This first picture is there's much more to growing a practice than just being a great lawyer. And this is probably the first trap that a lot of us fall into. And depending on how long you practice or practiced, at a certain point in time, you cap out with your practice. And the reason you cap out with the practice is that your legal skills only can get you so far in gross and net income. What you have to do is pivot to focusing on business skills. And the business skills are the really drivers of most gross revenue and net revenue in practices. And there's 4 critical business skills, and we're going to do a deep dive on one of them today, which is time management. And this is a challenge. So if you're trying to grow your practice, you really need 2 things, time and money. And if you're growing, you don't have either one of those. So you have to learn how to improve your time management skills to be more effective or more efficient with your time management. 2 is client development, right? If you want better cases, higher profit margins, you have to learn how to bring in better cases and better clients. So you actually have to jump your business skills for client development. 3 is building a great team. This is the blind spot for a lot of lawyers. Because you're thinking, if I'm just really great at the law, then everything else will work its way out. It doesn't work that way. You actually have to be really terrific at building and developing people. And this is probably the biggest distinction for me with solo and small firm attorneys. If they don't understand how to go from, usually it's a span of management. A good solo small firm attorney can manage probably 4 to 6 staff. And in the management circles and management theory, you'll consider that span of management. So you're trying to grow your practice, develop your team, market your practice, and consequently, you are in a position where you can't do all of that. And so if you're actually trying to grow your practice, you're going to have to jump your management skills to the next level. And to do that, you have to reduce your scope of management. And so you have to develop managers under you. And so building a team requires you to actually become not a great lawyer, but a great leader, a great manager, and a great thinker of developing people. And that's really what will drive the gross revenue for a lot of firms and allow you to take vacations, The next thing is cash flow and profitability. You got to understand your numbers. You got to understand your margins. And one of the things I try and say with lawyers, just because you can do a particular practice area doesn't mean you should. You have to understand the profitability of certain practice areas. Now, how does all this play into us today? Well, if your calendar looks like this little jelly bean jar on the screen, and you're trying to jam some of the things in to grow your practice, you're not going to be able to do it. So you actually have to use the time management skills to move your practice and your day to look more like this. And to actually have a high growth practice, you actually probably have to give 20% to 50% of what's on your desk away. And in larger firms with more senior attorneys, it's probably an 80% delegation issue. And if you're a billable hour shop, it's contrary to how you think, because you're trying to get your production numbers up. And so you have to really think through what should come off my desk and why. And that's really what today's webinar is more or less about, which is time management strategies. Okay? All right, with that, this is strategy 1. These are 7 practical strategies. Strategy number 1 is really simple. My experiences in working with lawyers is that to a certain extent, how we practice is kind of the equivalent of jumping into whitewater rapids. We go into the office and the calendar tells us what to do, and we just go with the flow. And we try and keep our head above water and stop from drowning throughout the day. When the day is over, we go home and go, oh, good Lord, that was something. And then we do the same thing over and over and over. And I believe today is Groundhog Day, so it's ironic that we're talking about that today. The first strategy is to shift from being calendar-driven to focus-driven. So one of the things I strongly recommend to attorneys is before you start your day, before you look at your email, before you start responding to voicemail, before you start talking to staff, is figure out what are the 3 most important things that you need to get done that day. What are the 3 most important things? I'm a big fan of getting lawyers to use paper planners. And so our company makes a planner called the My Great Life Planner. I don't care if you use our planner. I'd prefer that you would, because it has a lot of our concepts in it and it makes life easier. It's designed by lawyers for lawyers. And so, yep, there's Terry showing up. If that works for you, fantastic. If you like Covey, Seven Habits of Franklin Covey planner, go for it. If you like Michael Height's Full Focus planner, go for it. If you like the Panda planner, go for it. Whatever works for you. But I want you to get away from your case management system, from your calendar, probably for 15 minutes at the most, to think through, okay, if this was a great day, how would I plan it? And I don't care if you don't have a planner, use a sticky note, for goodness sake. Just write down on a sticky note, these are the 3 most important things for me to do for the day. I had some clients do it on napkins, paper towels. I don't care. The important part is writing it, because writing it engages the prefrontal cortex, tells your brain it's important, and prioritizes it for your brain on these are the 3 most important things for the day. So that's what I'm trying to get you to do. I'm trying to get you to think through, okay, how do I get my 3 most important things for the day done? And this becomes like a muscle. It becomes a muscle. You start to learn how to proactively focus your day away from the electronics. And this is where I like to see lawyers become focus-driven, not calendar-driven. And it's hard because as young attorneys, young associate attorneys, we're trained to do what's on our calendar. So you're not focus-driven, you're calendar-driven. And it requires time to pivot it and move it. So I usually love if I can get you to spend 15 minutes to plan your day. If I can get you to spend 30 minutes to plan your week, that's fantastic. But for today, step 1, 15 minutes to plan the day. Okay? Step 2, this is something I personally do. I love, which is called a daily focus sprint. All right? It's hard to work on some of the substantive stuff that you work on. So let's say you're preparing for a hearing. You got a motion that you got to file. You got a depo you got to do. Whatever it is, you got to have some time to think. And so you have to create a moat of quiet. You have to put a sign on the door, and if you're working in an office, so put a sign on the door, please, I'm working on focus time. I will come out and write what time you're going to come out. Please return at this time. 2, close your email, sign out of your email. Turn off your phone. I've gone so far as to take my phone and give it to somebody else and say, don't give it back to me. Like, just don't give it back to me, right? Don't give it to me. And then set a timer. Now, I use a kitchen timer, so I'm not using electronics during this time period, so you can use a kitchen timer to do this. Whatever works for you, but you're trying to shut off all distraction and protect your attention for somewhere between 15 to 25 minutes. I'll do 15-minute sprints. If I can pull off 25-minute sprint, I'll go for 25 minutes. But this is really about protecting your attention and your focus. It's the most important thing you bring to the party as a lawyer. You're bringing the ability to solve complex problems quickly. That's why people are hiring you. That's what they want, your judgment to solve these complex problems. So my experience is if you can get 1 to 2 of these sprints in a day, you're going to have a really productive day. If you can get 4 a day, it's fantastic. Now, I also use this technique on children, those of you that have children. If my wife may say, hey, look, we need to have the kids clean their rooms. My son will never clean his room, but if I say, look, all you got to do is work for 15 minutes, he'll work frantically for 15 minutes. So I think I can get about anything done with procrastination in my own world in 15-minute sprints. So that's what I'm going to encourage you to do, is look for that. Now, once you kind of get some success around the 15-minute sprint, then I'm going to shift you to a power hour. And a power hour is where you're taking that 15-minute sprint and you're taking it to the next level. And the next level is basically going to allow you to go, boom, 1 hour. And usually I use this to work on complex stuff, maybe trial prep, maybe drafting a complex estate plan, writing, whatever it is that you consider complex. But you have to do the same thing. You got to set a timer. And I like to set the timer because it forces me to stay focused for a period of time. I know I have this precious window of time to crank on work. And so I can do that. And so it allows me to just be really, really focused on what it takes to get that work done. So strategy 3 for us is taking the sprints and moving it to a bigger game, which is what we're calling the power hour. Now, we're going to talk on strategy 7, how to pre-schedule these in your week, but I like to have these pre-scheduled in my calendar for at least a week to 2 weeks in advance. So they're like preset appointments. And I tell my team, okay, this is a power hour. I'm going to work on, I'm going to work on Abby's case for that 1 hour. So I'm going to need everything I can to work on Abby's case. This is all I'm going to do for that hour. So please help me, protect me from any form of interruptions. Don't email me, don't text me, whatever you need to do, don't do it. Let me have 1 hour of concentrated work on this particular matter. Think of it like surgery. Think of it like surgery. If you've got a heart surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon working on you, do you want them responding to texts? Do you want them checking emails? Do you want them doing anything like that? No, you want them just focused on the surgery. So this is what you do. You solve complex problems. It's like surgery. So we need you focused. Bring your best gifts to bear on this particular matter and this particular problem. Great. Strategy 4. Now, most of you will ignore this. I totally understand. I ignored this strategy for the first 10 years of my career. This is a terrible strategy. Most lawyers will tell me this is a stupid strategy. Take time off. Take time off. And taking time off requires you to be away from the phone, away from email, away from any form of communication with the office. So for me, a day off means no email, no phone calls, no nothing work related. So why do we recommend that? Well, let's ignore the fact that we'd like you to have a great life. What I'm really focused on is your creativity. And there's a tremendous amount of studies that show that your brain works like any other muscle. And that for you to actually improve your brain and allow your creativity and your intellect to basically expand and the neuroplasticity of the brain to improve, is it needs a break. It needs a break from doing the same thing over and over and over. It'd be like an athlete just doing push-ups every day. At some point in time, it starts to have a decline of return on investment with that particular exercise. Now, my suggestion is that you go ahead and do things with people that you love and care about. And so I would suggest that as you look at the year in advance, is that you first plan your family time first. Most lawyers plan their work time first, and I'm going to strongly recommend that you plan your family time first. And so when we look out, I want you to say, okay, what are the important family events for me? I have 2 kids in college, so I have to negotiate with them on what are going to be the big family trips. Are there significant family events that are planned for the year? Go ahead and protect them. And also think for your health and wellness. Think about your own health and wellness. So if we're trying to protect time off for recharging and recovery, we may actually have to calendar in your calendar time for exercise, time to see your primary care doc, time for the dentist, time for the things that are important for your proactive health. If you're the golden goose of your practice, we have to keep you laying golden eggs. We can't wear you out. I mean, so if you did have a golden goose that would lay golden eggs, you wouldn't over caffeine, you would give it too much coffee, you would make sure it ate right, you would make sure it exercised, you take good care of it, right? And most of you are trying to squeeze yourself to do too much, too fast. And that's why I think we have such a high level of burnout in our profession. We just don't appreciate what we have to do to have a balance, and we're just burning ourselves out quicker and faster every year. Strategy 5, think through your marketing activities. So if you're thinking through your marketing activities, there's probably 3 points here today. Number 1 is there a season to your practice? Now in the estate planning and elder law, there's a season. Summer slows down. In litigation, the most tense times of the year for me were fourth quarter, prior to the end of the year. So I knew that if I was going to take some time off, it probably wouldn't be fourth quarter, but if it was going to take time off, I knew I had to take about a week to week and a half around November. In the end of November, typically around Thanksgiving, because the last part of the year for me was crushing. That's when most of my cases got settled. That's when we had mediations. That's when we had a lot of things. So I needed to have a break before I went to that last month of the year for a sprint. So you want to look, is there a seasonality to your practice? 2, if those of you that do retail marketing or do educational marketing, especially in the estate planning, elder law, sometimes in the family law, speaking is critical. And so doing webinars, doing lectures, is there a workshop schedule to your practice that we've got to pre-anticipate and plan out? And those of you that rely on referrals, which I would presume is a lot of you, one of the critical elements is referral development. We recommend at least 3 marketing contacts per week. So if you're looking at 3 marketing contacts per week, I'd like to have those pre-scheduled on your calendar. We may not know who they are, but if we're doing lunches, if we're doing phone calls, if we're doing certain things, I want them pre-scheduled on your calendar and protected, if that makes sense to you guys. So 3 is typically the minimum that we'd like to see, but if you can at least get 1 in, I'd rather have 1. If you can get 2 in, get me 2. But I want something that you're actually proactively marketing in some way, shape, or form. Strategy 6. Block out project time. As you look at your calendar, proactively block it out. And for me, if I'm looking a week in advance, I'm going to block out time for cases and cash flow work. And I'm going to block out time to work on my business. And so I may work on projects that are related to practice growth and projects that are related to case management and case work. And so if I'm looking at my calendar, I'll separate those because I want to make sure I've got some time to work on my practice. I want to make sure I got some time to improve my practice. I want to make sure that that time is preset. Because if not, you're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over. You'll be chasing cash flow, you'll be doing more work, and you have to decide at some point in time, are you doing tasks for cash? Are you working on strategies for growth? And as your practice grows, it's going to grow based on leverage, and leverage of team, leverage of other people's talents. You can't be the hero of the practice forever. You can't be the sole person doing everything. And that's really where most lawyers, when they have that realization that they're like, oh my God, I'm the hero of the story here. I'm the hero of the practice. They realize to actually grow the firm, they actually have to pivot to developing and working with other people. And to do that, you have to find time on your calendar to work on those growth projects away from actually case management or case work, so to speak. Last one, which is going to be a fairly hefty one. This is a building block strategy for time management. This is a pretty hefty one. This one is using the time template. Now, this is a tool that we'll put in the chat box. This is a gold standard tool we've been teaching and sharing for 30 years. This is really where you try and plan out what an ideal week looks like for you. Now I've got an example for you. So this is an example. You're probably not going to have the time to do this today. Those of you that want to take advantage of talking to Terry and Denise, I would suggest that you do a rough draft of this before talking to them if you can, so they can give you some feedback on it. But I'll give you an example of one. And it's not pretty, right? This is not pretty, but it's functional. And in this one, we have pink for strategic growth concepts, which is work, that we got booked from 9:30 to 11:30 on this one. We have client meetings preset in green. We have casework or time for hearings. We have another day to work on projects. We have possible free time. We have time for our marketing appointments. We have time blocked for calls and emails set aside. And then my example here has got a Tuesday lead generation workshop or presentation that this attorney is doing. And so on the bottom left, you can see what do we need to schedule time for? And this is a hypothetical. We have time for production, returning phone calls, marketing, case status review, client meetings, working on the practice, the business itself. What do we have time? When do we need the time scheduled for? When are you at the best? Is it better for mornings, all afternoon, some mornings, some evenings? And really what this is designed to do is to get you to think through ideally what the work week would look like. And we're not shooting for perfection. We're just kind of doing a rough draft for me. For me, if I can get 80% of what I think a great week would look like and then kind of capture that, I can teach my team that. Now, I want to point out a real quick practice tip here. These are color-coded. There's reasons that these are color-coded. So when I teach, when I develop team and when I teach other lawyers to develop team, I basically said you got to come up with a color code for your calendaring. Because that way a brand new receptionist or a brand new scheduler or a brand new legal assistant may not know all the nomenclatures and acronyms, but they know colors. So they know that green is a client meeting, so it's okay to schedule the clients during these blocks. Pink is a meeting to work on the business, so it's okay to set these kind of certain appointments during these meetings. Otherwise, they interrupt you and say, hey, when do I schedule this meeting? I don't know what this is. I don't know how this works. So you're trying to pre-anticipate how to train them and protect your own focus by eliminating and dealing with interruptions. Now with that, we have 2 minutes left. So I delivered 7 concepts in 25 minutes, which is very hard for an Irish guy to do. All right, so that was really hard. And what I'm going to do is, if you could, post in the chat box your takeaway. So Abby, Terry, myself, John, I think Ade is on here as me. Hey Ade, I see you. She's signed on as me. So there's 2 Steve Rileys, one which is a lot better looking than the real one I clearly take on. And so with a much better smile. Upcoming programs. So those of you that are interested in doing a deeper dive or want to do some work with us, we do our flagship workshop is called Double Your Revenue, which is surprisingly about doubling your revenue. And so it's a 1-day workshop. We're going to do that on February 4th. We're going to have 2 scheduled that are live streamed that we'll do via Zoom. So if you're interested in that, you can go to our website and register for those. And then our flagship coaching program is called the Practice Growth Program. And we're launching one on February 28th and another one on March 19th. And so those are upcoming. Now, as I bring to a close, I'm just going to encourage those of you that would like to take advantage of that complementary diagnostic to do so you can do a deeper dive on your practice. And with 1 minute left, I'm going to see if anybody's got any specific questions or issues I can do before I let you all go back to your busy practices. And Abby, Terry, I'm just going to need your help. If you've got a question, you're either going to use the hand gesture inside of Zoom or you're going to have to wave frantically so we see you. And I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, great. Any questions before we wrap up for the day? What happens when your day gets derailed? Somebody posted that. I didn't see who posted that real quick. Great question. You know what I recommend? It sounds kind of crazy. I always studied why. Why did it get derailed? And so what happened here? What was the thing that derailed me? And so I usually have to take a moment and study it. I'm like, okay, why did I get derailed here? What happened? And sometimes it's an interruption. Sometimes it's a crisis. Sometimes it's the business talking to you. So for me, any type of derailment is an educational opportunity. I like, why did this happen? So I don't just experience and go, it happened. I want to know the why behind it to learn from it. Fred, you have something specific that 3 or 4 people are jumping on top of. Fred, what did you have to say? It's good to see you, Fred. Let's go and mute you.
Yeah, can you hear me, Steve?
Yeah, I can hear you, Fred.
Yeah, I just mentioned that I have learned these strategies for 5 years now that I've been with Atticus, and I'm really, really good at starting them, but I'm not good at staying long term, and I get sucked back into the whirlwind of living a reactive mode rather than proactive mode. So I really need to focus on long term.
Yeah, it's great. 2 suggestions. Usually, Fred, and this may not be the case with you, but usually when I have a client that gets kind of reactive, it's usually because they're saying yes to certain things that they should be saying no to.
I'm really bad about that.
Yeah, and so that's my suspicion, is that we're saying yes when we should be saying no. And as your practices grow and your skills grow and your reputation grow, the most important thing that we have to develop is a skill to say no. And most lawyers go through survival, like how in the world am I going to pay for things, to need, to want. And they don't realize that they've grown so greatly that sometimes they still have a survival mentality where they take on certain opportunities, certain cases, certain relationships that probably should be a no. And so that would be the first thing I would look at, Fred. Are we saying yes where we should be saying no? And then 2, I'd study where we're having... I'd study a little bit like where are we doing things that we don't love? And this is the loathe to love conversation that we do in the workshops, right? What are we doing that we don't love? And if you're finding things that you don't love, stop doing those or delegate those or hire other people to do those. But one of the things I've really learned is that we have a high pain tolerance as lawyers. And we do a lot of really stupid things over 20 to 30 years that we don't like to do. Certain types of cases, certain types of clients, certain types of referral relationships, certain things. And for example, I would get referrals from the court, like court-appointed work. I hated it because they were always terrible clients, and you get paid. The pay would be terrible, but no one would say no to a judge. And well, we worked up the courage and we told the judge, we can't do these anymore. They're just killing us. We're just killing us. We can't do court-appointed work, And well, these are complicated. The judge would say, these are complicated. I really want you to take them on. I appreciate that, judge, but no, I just can't do it, because by the time the caseworker cuts the fee, by the time somebody else cuts the fee, and by the time you cut the fee, we're basically destroyed. We lose any money doing this. We cut the fee, so it's cut 4 times, 1 by us and 3 by other people. And so we realized those were unprofitable cases. We had to say no. And all my friends were like, you're an idiot. I said, well, yeah, that's true, but we have to say no to certain things. In low margin, painful, ugly cases is a fantastic place to do it. And then, Fred, do exactly what you're doing. In the back of the My Great Life, in the planner, the weekly reflection. Once a week, you have the weekly reflection. Look at that. So in the weekly reflection, Fred, I want you to look at that and use that to study. What's going on? What didn't work about this week? What worked about this week? And if you got to do it on Sunday afternoon, do it on Sunday afternoon. But I want you to spend a few minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes to study, where did I get off the rails? Where did I go off the rails, right? So, good. All right, with that, we're right on the time, I think, which we agreed. No, we're 4 minutes past. So, Abby, I'm going to go ahead and call us to a close. Those of you that had questions, take advantage